Yeah, I will stand up. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me here to come to this great conference. I come from Sternenfels, that's a little village in the Enzkreis in the south of Germany, Pforzheim, that's the Landkreis. But my home university, it's already said, it's University of Tübingen, and there I'm still training social workers who study social work. And my main studies there, when I put up my research work on my doctoral thesis, were besides social work and mobile youth work, was psychology and criminology, which is very important for outreach workers in the world, I think. So for today, I need your permission that we change a little bit the program. As you see here, you can read in the program what you see here on the slide. It says street work, outreach youth work, detached youth work, and then double that, mobile youth work from a German perspective. You might have seen there is a change in the program, and that our colleague from Finland tomorrow, I don't know whether you have seen, cannot come. So I have to replace him tomorrow. And tomorrow, the theme in the plenum is challenges and possibilities for the future development of outreach work with young people. A look in the future, not only in Norway, on Europe, but in the whole world. If we can have a look in the future, no one is a prophet. No. Me, of course, also not. But this is more, a result, from my standpoint, of the whole conference, what I have heard and learned here. So my change for today is my suggestion. If you agree, I give only a short introduction about this theme, this German perspective. What does it mean? And then I would present you a case, an actual challenge to a German community, which I think this case is very typical for many, many European cities. I've talked to quite a few of you participants here in the conference, and what I've heard, it seems to me, and I would like to discuss with you how you see this case and how you would react, because this is an actual challenge. There's nothing decided yet. This little city with 25,000 inhabitants is called Mühlacker. It's in the Enzkreis, and I know it quite well. And what happens there seems to be typical. But, okay, before I go into that, do you agree that we change this program?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah? Okay. As my colleague said, this gives us a chance to talk with each other, because we are 20 people here and maybe we have 20 different opinions how to solve this problem. Okay, then let's do it this way. Well, to my person, I'm 69 and I'm about 40 years now, over 40 years in this field, in different roles, as a street worker, as a mobile youth worker. Then I studied again the whole thing, because we had in the 60s and in the 70s quite a bit success of this approach of mobile youth work, which includes street work and outreach work, but as a community-based approach. That's sometimes different. I go into that tomorrow deeper. And this led to the thinking, what can we do? What are the reasons? Why is this approach so successful in preventing problems in communities, in preventing juvenile delinquency, violence, drug addiction, and so on? So I went again to the university, and we did a lot of studies about youth gangs, youth cliques, peer group learning in the drug scene field, and so on. And then we put up quite a few projects again under scientific research, evaluation studies, to find out what are the actual points street workers, outreach workers, or mobile youth workers should take in consideration. So, of course, out of this, we had quite a few publications, mainly in German, but since quite a while we are very much busy also in Eastern European countries, and I come to that later. And then we had created an institute for training and qualification in mobile youth work. And in Germany, we founded on a state level, Baden-Württemberg, but later on also on a national level, eine BAG, Bundesarbeitsgemeinschaft, that means a national organization of the street worker and mobile youth worker for Germany. In Germany we have about 1,600 projects, but of course not all use the term mobile youth work. Some say we are street workers, some say very few talk about outreach work, but in Baden-Württemberg most projects call themselves mobile youth workers. So this ISMO, this international organization for mobile youth work, has the task to get in touch with colleagues, not only in Germany but worldwide. Since 1982 we have international symposia, that means conferences like here in Oslo. In September, from the 15th to the 18th, we have in Stuttgart again the 9th International Symposium on Mobile Youth Work. You are all welcome if you like to come and can afford to come to Stuttgart. It's for 4 days, and we expect about the same amount of participants as you have here, between 200 and 400. It depends, of course, as you know, how much money we raise to offer our colleagues from Africa, from Latin America, from Asia, or even from Eastern European countries, poor countries like Bulgaria or Georgia. You have to offer travel costs, of course, and so we want them to come to exchange their information. So now to the approach here. I better sit down to have two files here. Okay. It's weggegangen. Where did it go? Telemark computer. Okay, here we go. So. 51. Here are the files you can see tomorrow, but I only selected now a very few for today. I should have 51. Okay, that's the card of Europe. Okay, you have to move a little bit to see all the countries, but now we are, well, in a way in the center here in Norway, in Oslo. And in Germany, the whole thing started in, as I said, 67 in the Stuttgart area. And the problems at that time were, I would say, the same as they are nowadays all over in the world, even in Germany. These were youth, youngsters, being violent, making mischief, destroying public parks, or having fights with rivalry gangs. They have gang fights, they had killings, they killed a policeman in a shooting. But this is not typical, the shootings, but now and then we have also killings out of a high aggression pole of these gangs. It depends very much how it's said, and usually if criminality plays a big role, of course, the first organization which is called in is of course the police, the investigation department, the police special department to fight juvenile delinquency. Special policemen are trained, and only to the second step, youth workers, social workers are asked to be part or involved in preventing such problems. But in '67, we had the chance to bring in social workers, youth workers, and they were very successful, as I said. And then this approach of mobile youth work, as we call it, spread not only in Stuttgart but in the whole state of Baden-Württemberg, and after that also in Germany. And what are the essentials, I would say? I call, when you see the title, street work, outreach youth work, or detached youth work, what is very important, what is usually not practiced, not part of the concept of the approach when they talk, we do street work in Germany or in any other country in the world, that they're not having an approach of integrated community work. They have sometimes separate community workers, but the concept of community mobilization, that means not only that we have roundtables with all social affairs, administration people, youth authorities, but also with the inhabitants of a sleeping quarter, of a suburb, of a quarter, so to speak, the democratic element of the approach, that the parents, the neighbors, the businessmen of the quarter, of the social area, of the ghetto, whatever, should be involved in solving the problem. And we say mobile youth workers have to have the responsibility to involve the community, the inhabitants of the whole quarter, of the whole suburb, in solving the problem. Not just they themselves as outreach workers, street workers. We are very courageous. We go to this difficult target group, to these violent gangs, and we are the greatest. We help them. They talk to us, and we try to gain trustful relations. That's only one part. But, don't have to tell that to you. The reasons why they act violent, why they took drugs or have fights with rivalry gangs, with ethnic minorities, with the Turks or with the Croatians or with the Lebanese or whatever, or the Russians. We have many Russians in Germany. They are on another level. You cannot just deal with, prevent, just when you do individual casework or group work or the therapeutical work. The individualization of social problems is, for me, according to my perspective, worldwide a big problem of social work. That means social workers today at the universities where they are trained all over the world, the main approach is individualizing the problem. It's a pathological approach, is psychiatric, is not group-oriented, and is not even farther away community-based. So this is a big problem in training, in the training of social work worldwide. But that means also if the social workers come with a diploma of social work from the universities, they didn't learn mobile youth work in this approach, being group-oriented and community-based, mobilizing the community. And of course, there are many other reasons. Counseling in as the colleague this morning said, in a nicely decorated council office, gives more respect, gives more recognition, and sometimes it's also higher paid as street work. And street workers and outreach workers, at least in Germany, to become such a, or to hold such a position is not too well paid. You can make more money as a social worker if you become a therapist. And so when social workers have finished their studies at university, they try at least to learn additional therapeutical concept. And as you know, if you see the literature you have over 200 or even more special therapeutical approaches, because this is much more recognized in societies all over the world. This individualizing, medical-oriented therapeutical oriented approach than doing the hard work of going in the streets and then even mobilizing the community, the neighbors, the different ethnic groups. So we can discuss about that, but I want to go to this map I show here. You see, about here is Stuttgart and here's Tübingen, the south. We have now in Germany all over, also since the political change in the 90s, 1989 and 90, we had big problems, I'll show you later, in the new German states, former Democratic Republic. When we got in touch with colleagues from, have you a pointer?
Sorry, just thinking that you could use the slideshow to get the picture bigger.
Yeah.
On the
Shift
computer.
and F5.
Yeah. F5.
And you have to
Okay. That is, rounding is away. 5.
Shift and F5.
Okay. Okay. Shift and 5.
F5.
F5.
Yeah.
Okay. Well. Anyway, we got in touch with colleagues from France. They are represented here. The Travailleurs de la Rue. They go out in the streets. They can tell more about this. So you could say since the 70s, this approach of street work is nearly known in all countries in Europe, and of course in different fields, not only in youth work. We have street workers working with prostitutes in the sex work. We have street workers with unemployed, with homeless people, also grown-ups. So, but actually, the origin of street work comes, as you know, from the United States, from the 20s and the last century, in the big cities of New York and Chicago and Los Angeles, with delinquent gangs. And at that time they had this term of street corner work, which is known in the Netherlands. We had street gang work, street-based youth work, and different approaches. And only in the 90s that we're talking about outreach youth work to make clear that they leave their facility, they go in the field of the youth. And in England, in the UK, there were mainly detached youth work. Detached, that means going out from the office, from the. But this was similar, and the same is true for Belgium. And until '89, we didn't have that in the communist countries. And ISMO is now since then very active in these countries and doing training. So. It spread it, but I would say at that time, looking back, but also my prognosis for the future is street workers are very much, how can I say, in those heads of youth aid system planners in the local administration, they are thought valuable to instead sending in police forces, street workers as people who try to solve conflicts between groups, fights, aggression, if they disturb the public order, and but most administrations, most employers who are in charge of preparing good youth policy, they don't think about community problem solving, empowerment, the community, that they are really able to solve the problem. And the street worker or the mobile youth worker is the agent who is starting this process, because there's one big reason. Mobile youth work you cannot do without public relation. with working together with mass media, with the local press, with radio, TV. And if you publicize a social problem as a street worker, you get problems with your employer. The city government doesn't like that. Or the mayor doesn't like that a street worker says, we have such and such so many delinquents or drug addicts, or because it gives a bad light for him, and as a politician you want to give a picture that everything is fine in the suburb or in the quarter where you're responsible for. So this is a big problem. But it has results on what a street worker, as we say, a mobile youth worker, can really initiate. And in the 70s in Germany we had big problems with such an approach. If they emphasized very much that, well, this individual work is not bad, but we have to go to the causes, to the reasons why are they acting like that. And they made a lot of public relation, and they had problems with their employers. They were fired because, as you know, the hand which are feeding you cannot beat. This is a saying, because you cannot criticize your own employer if it's the city government. If you're hired by a city government, you have problems if you criticize the policy, the youth policy of your city. So this part of approach of activities is cut out of the approach of many street workers. They are not allowed to do that. They cannot put up publicity. Sometimes it is necessary to dramatize a problem, otherwise nothing will change in a city. And as I say, as a social worker, I think public relation, that is the sharpest and the most effective weapon or instrument, I can also say, we have. If we are not touching people, if we are not informing the inhabitants of a quarter, they don't know what's going on with their youth. But if you inform them how many are in detention centers, in prisons, have criminal records, or are drug addicted, or excluded, or unemployed, usually the people don't know, the neighbors don't know. There's a high anonymity in such quarters. And this morning a colleague told me, well, most of the people don't know who is living upstairs or next door, and there's a high anonymity. But if you inform them, if you try to involve them, you have to talk with them, you have to raise publicity. Okay, so this is I would say, an actual problem which is immanent in our approach, because I know many street workers who would like to do this kind of public relation, to mobilize the community, but they are not allowed by their employer. And of course then you have to think, okay, what kind of employer should you have? Is it good to be employed by a community, or should it be an NGO, a non-governmental organization? My opinion is, and we made research on that, non-governmental organizations have much more, give their street workers, their mobile youth workers, much more freedom in what they think it should be done as a part of their approach. Okay, let me go to this other folie. I have to look it. I guess it's number 4. Where do we find it? Okay, we go in front again.
Hvordan kommer vi tilbake til
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thanks. Okay, no. I get it. Okay, so Gruberg. You see all these tomorrow. Okay. Here, these are these living quarters I'm talking about, but okay. Okay, I want to present to you this. So, and now I have to, what did you say? Shift and F5. Okay, here we go. But this is not completely on it. But anyway, in Germany in 1991, we had a big problem of reunification, and you might have read at that time in your press, we had a lot of violent accidents, violent happenings in many different cities, but especially in eastern German cities. Here, for instance, in Dresden, here in Hoyerswerda became world famous. Press teams, TV teams from all over the world came to Hoyerswerda because at that time the asylum homes were burning, and these very much right-wing oriented youth groups, cliques, extremistic oriented, they were fighting and hurting and killing even foreigners, Vietnamese and black people. But it was not only in Eastern German states, but also North Rhine-Westphalia, in Rheinland-Pfalz, in Saarland, even very few also in Bavaria in the south, but mainly in these states of Germany. At that time, our present Chancellor Angela Merkel was Minister for Family and Youth, and we had at that time already a lot of experience with violent groups in Germany, and she came to the Diakonie to Stuttgart, and we talked to her for 2 hours what we would do as Diakonie. In Stuttgart has been the center for the Diakonie in Germany. I don't know whether you know that we have about 450,000 full-time employees, about another 500,000 Ehrenamtliche. Was heißt das?
Volunteers.
Volunteers, thank you. Volunteers in Diakonie, that means social work, doing social work for the Protestant Church. And the same is true about the same figures for the Caritas, the Catholic Church. But I worked for the Diakonie at that time. She came and we said, well, we can offer experience of mobile youth work 20 years, at least 20 years in the past. And she listened to it, and after 2 weeks, at that time our government was still in Bonn, she put up a program for 3 years, the so-called AGAG program, that means anti-aggression program for youth in Germany. But this, and she put up about 20 million marks per year, but only for the eastern states. This was an offer to integrate, to give them help, youngsters from Eastern European countries. And we had the chance to establish about 23 projects after this burning in Saxony, only in that, because in the other states there were other organizations offering their competence in supervising these new projects and putting up projects, offers in youth work, in sports activities, in music and culture. But these projects were only working as long as the money was running, because they had not the approach to root this approach in the community. As I said before, the inhabitants, we call it the social capital of each city or suburb has to be built up. Social capital is important. That street workers, outreach youth workers need allies, they need supporters. They come in crisis, they have problems, and who is standing behind them? Who is defending them in the public? Because if there is a new activity of criminality, or if a youth group has maybe made a hold-up or any crime against a passenger or people in the streets, there is a lot of press activities and they are attacked. Why did you not prevent that, and so on? In such a case, you need support from your employer. And of course, if you answer to the press what you see the reason, then you should have an employer or a community, a local pressure group who stands behind you, who is defending your approach. And because if this condition of an approach of outreach worker is not included in the concept, well, the work is only running, I think this is true all over the world, not only in Germany, as long as the money is coming. But in Saxony, we have, from these 23 projects we put up in many cities, in these 23 cities, still 17, but in the other states there's nothing left. They have to start from the beginning, because it was not in their mind to establish a youth work approach in this community. Because when the street work or the outreach work goes out and a new one comes, the population should know we need that approach for our excluded youth. They cannot, they don't have the meaning that they can solve the problem forever. They are, in a way, repairers, but they work more on the reasons, on exclusion processes in the cities, in the neighborhoods. And if the community, or at least very important part of the inhabitants, influential people of the city, if they are convinced of your approach, they will stand up and say, well, we want to have a new approach of outreach worker or mobile youth worker. Okay, so, yeah. And this, do you have any question to this? Okay. I guess we should now go to the case, but before, maybe you can react on that, what I said before, and maybe introduce yourself as you before mentioned. Yeah?
Maybe a little example
of a case.
Maybe a little example of what mobile youth work is in Germany, because it might be a bit different than in the other countries. You know, how do things get put together? You know, maybe a street worker just working in the street, but what does he do additionally?
Okay. Okay, maybe you can go a little bit up here.
To include the community or something like that.
I'm going to. Maybe you can get this city a little up. No, otherwise, I take another folio, which might give you a chance. Wait a minute. So, little example. Let's say here. Here we go. So, this is the city of Stuttgart. Here in this area, Freiburg, Rot München, the whole approach started 67. And now we have in 16 areas of Stuttgart mobile youth worker, and these are independent NGOs. Not the community is paying 60%, the state pays 20%, and the rest is paid by the churches, the Catholic and the Protestant church, and they hire at least 2 mobile youth workers, and they hire them if there are problems, as I mentioned, with drug addiction, with the drug scene, with violence, with ethnic minority exclusion problems, and so on. Yeah? Okay? And so, and what is now your question? I mean, they do street work, they do group work, case work, and community work. And the employer, the responsible agency, gives them the chance to put their energy, their time into these 4 approaches. And if you plan an idealistic project, the first step, I didn't mention yet, is a social area analysis. That means in each of these quarters of Stuttgart, here, the situation is different. And idealistically spoken, and that's also what I teach in general, you have to make first, you have hard data, statistical data and soft data. That means qualitative and quantitative data. And each concept here in these 16 different Stuttgart areas look different, because the living situation, the precarious situation of youngsters, of elderly, of asylum seekers, of migrants from Turkey, from Russia, is different. They have different cultural backgrounds, language problems, integration problems. Some Turkish areas, they have a real problematic, what we call a parallel society. You know, they don't learn German, and they stick together. They have a high cohesion within the Turkish neighborhood, and they are not open it. And they live here maybe 10, 20, 30 years, and they don't speak German. It's a problem. Their children live in two worlds during school time and work time in the German world, and then they come home in an Islamic, conservative Anatolian village of the south of Turkey, maybe. And this creates a lot of problems. So I'm saying with this example, a mobile youth worker have to take that into consideration, and not just asking to this Turkish Mehmet, he should behave better and try to make his influence because he's a strong negative role model, because he's a fighter and attacking the policemen when they're showing up. He's very courageous. But then they try to make him, transform him, I could say, to a positive model, and then maybe talking to his father, his family, and to take his social background into the approach, which is difficult. But not just saying you should behave better, or I give you now the chance to have a job, or, which is a lot already. That's what I'm saying, mobilizing the background, the social background of each problematic child or youngster. Is this an answer for your question?
Mm-hmm. And after that analysis, then you start creating
building a concept.
Smaller, yeah, a
yes,
concept with
yes.
smaller
right.
parts.
Right. And in this case, I wanted to present you, if we have time enough, I would raise this question again because in mobile youth work we have also the concept of working with so-called indigenous workers. That means ex-members of gangs, of cliques, as I said before, influential young people, girls, boys, who are very intelligent, who made in the past were acting as negative models for the younger ones, even drug addicts. We had ex-users of heroin, got them to become positive models for the 12, 13-year-old who were interested. Also went to them that, could you show me how to make a shot in my vein here on my arm, and how can I get heroin? I want to try it because you are such a tough guy, and you were talking about this terrific experience, this explosion in your brain, and I want to try that. We know from all sociological and scientific studies, drug consuming, alcohol and also illegal drugs, it's a learned approach. And learning means, the learning theory, you are familiar with that? It means always older, experienced persons give their knowledge to younger ones. And this process of learning, we try to recognize and try to influence. We try to make this learning process and the other way around, that the 12, 13-year-old who look at the big guy, big fighter, or a drug addict, a heroin junkie, very cool type, to form him, to gain him. But of course we have to do a lot for him, that his living situation is changing, that he comes away from his dependence on heroin, whatever he's using, or speed, whatever. You have to offer something. I mean, when I was a young social worker, I was told with heroin nothing can compete because it's such a devilish drug. It's terrible. And I was impressed with it. I seem to believe that. Well, okay, it only was for physical doctors and hospitals and these dependents, physically and mentally, the big problem. And nothing can compete. But the boys and girls from what area? From this area, from Hallschlag. They taught me it's not true. If you offer something which is attractive for the individual person, also for a drug addict, but he decides whether this alternative is attractive, not you. You think it might be attractive. You have to try many things. If you go into this competition, what is better? Normal life, attractive, or staying on drugs? But of course, I wouldn't say this is not a general rule. It's only true for younger ones who are still on the way getting rid of all good connection to their families, to their friends, to their partners. When they are already over 30 years of age and are maybe already for years on junk, it's hard to reach. This method doesn't work anymore. Then you only can support them to have a life of dignity, that they are not just hanging in prisons around. But as long as they are up to 25, you can stop their career, but you have to have attractive alternatives. And mobile youth workers think about how can we organize in their daily life alternatives that they really are willing to take away this drug. But it should, and I experienced it works, but you have to stick hard to it, and of course you have to think many cases will fail, but if you overcome, and it's a long time. Can we do something here? Timing? Maybe this hurts a little bit. Oh yeah. Yeah. Might help. Anyway. Okay. I have to look at the time. How much time do we have left?
1 hour.
1 hour. Okay. No. I come in front. So it's better. Okay. Any more questions?
I have one question.
Yes.
As you were speaking of mobile youth work,
Yes.
and you told us about this model
Yes.
of NGOs
Yes.
in Stuttgart.
Yes.
Is that way it's organized most of Germany, or is Stuttgart special from other provinces?
I would say Stuttgart is the most dense net of mobile youth workers. And many other southern German Baden-Württemberg cities, it is similar. That the churches go together with other NGOs, but we have also mobile youth workers which are employed by the city governments. And in other states, in other part of Germany, we have street work. We are not talking about mobile youth work. For instance, there's a colleague here from Berlin, Mr. Schützler. Did you meet him? You? From Gangway? You know Gangway?
I know that.
You talked to him. Okay, anyway, we gave advice to the Berlin government, the Senate, 20 years ago. They asked us about our experience in southern Germany, in Stuttgart, because they know mobile youth work seems to be very effective. Can we also have that? And then we gave a lot of advice and expertise and so on. That, well, it sounds good, but we don't have the money. It's too expensive, mobile youth work. We want only street workers. And they formed now in many suburbs of Berlin so-called mobile teams. They call it mobile teams. Stefan Schützer told me today they call it now different. But anyway, this was the approach. In the way of the politicians thinking, these mobile teams, at least a man, a woman, trained social workers, and we send them in the cities where it's burning, where the problems are, to calm down the youth problems, the fights and violence and so on. And then, if the problem is gone, no community work, no routine, the approach in the community, no working together with the churches, with the local power structure, no. Because they need more time, and then these mobile teams can send to another part of Berlin where there is a new problem. This is a way of thinking like firefighters, social firefighters. And many politicians in German cities think like that. And I'm sure this is true in France, in Norway, in England, wherever. If we have, instead of policemen, well-grown, trained social workers, it's much better. It sounds more human, maybe more effective, and it doesn't cost that much. If it works, it's fine, but I say this approach has very short limits. And it's not rooted, it's not the approach which also is discussed in social work, empowerment of the people. We have, was heißt Anspruch? We have
Demand?
demand, yeah, thank you. We have to demand that we as mobile youth workers have to help the inhabitants of a quarter to solve their problem. Not we are the experts come and solve the problem. Yeah, we helping them because these problem kids are their children. They are the parents of these violent Turkish and Lebanese and Russian, and they don't know what's going on because the social workers don't think to involve them in this problem solving. This is community problem solving, and as I said before, most street workers and outreach workers in Europe, it's my impression, are not trained like that, and they don't demand this approach. Was this an answer for you? Yes. Okay. Do you have questions?
Because it's quite different from Norway. When you talk about NGOs, of course we are NGOs doing a lot of very good work, and also paid more or less by the government or authorities. But like we do in Oslo, we are employed in the municipal authorities. So my question is, when it's NGOs in your case, and it sounds like it's a very nice approach doing the community work, but we, as we do, we try to do the community work as employees in the authorities.
Okay.
And what I think is, how do you have the power or the authority to work with schools, with police, with the ordinary system? Do you have the authority to really be in systemize the prevention work? Because now it sounds in my ears as you are firemen, like you said, but you are doing it in a good way. But we try not to get fires. So it's an authority, it's the politicians who have asked us to do it. They are not afraid to say, we have problems here and here and here and here. We have problems. Try our administration. Please try our authorities to solve this problem with your employees.
Mm-hmm.
And we are employees that go into the community and try to do it beforehand.
I understand. I would say if a community tries to force a policy of prevention, perfect. And first of all, I would say when we do the social area analysis, of course we have to analyze what kind of organizations are there already. We have to prove, are they not able to solve the problem? Do we need really new approaches, new outreach roles, mobile use roles? First of all, that's the first step. Not just putting up a new organization who is fighting against other, fighting for funds and money. No, this is the second step. And first of all, you have to try, are the present organizations in a city, in a suburb, are they, maybe if they get support or qualification or counseling, they might be able. So, but all these approaches in Stuttgart or in other cities, well, we tried that. They gave way, they said, we are not able to. Let me give you an example. We have many youth centers, open youth centers, social workers, and in the beginning, these youth workers, our colleagues in the youth centers, said, well, we don't need mobile youth workers because those kids you are talking about, these violent gangs and cliques, they are also coming in our youth center. They behave sometimes bad, sometimes good, And if they are not behaving, they get, in German, Hausverbote, how can you say that? They are excluded. They are not allowed to come any longer in the youth center. But in the policy of this suburb, we were fighting to have the youth center open offer also for problematic youth, children at risk. And this is paradox that we had in Stuttgart one youth center, and we in a social ghetto, a real problematic area, and we were fighting that there should be at least 4 or 5 or 6 trained full-time social workers that they can have really take care also for the problematic, the children at risk. Within a half year, when this opened, this youth center, it was fought for in the public, and there was big controversy. Finally, it was the largest center in Stuttgart, and after half a year, it was the center with the highest rate of excluded youth, because these violent and drug-using children became step by step more and more exclusion files. And then what happened then? Then we asked, what are you doing? Now they make mischief. They even attack these youth workers. They stick their wheels and their cars, and one of the workers were attacked because it was very strict. No, if you don't behave well, we kick you out for 1 month or 6 months. And even there are youth centers who say, you have a life sentence. You never are allowed to come in our youth center. So this is our society reacts. There is not even enough, even under our colleagues. We had a lot of fights with these colleagues, because they said, well, if you use drugs, if you have alcohol and smuggle them in, or if you start a fight, you are not allowed to be here. They did not have time, they were not trained, they were not allowed to go out and make with them special offers in sportive, outdoor, adventure activities, because they have to be during the opening hours in the youth center. This is a structural problem of youth efforts. But coming back to your question, I would say, if a city, a government, a local city, they have to have a policy which should include all youth, not just the well-behaving youth, the middle class and the upper class youth, with fine cultural activities, sport, and but also with Pakistani, with Turkish, or with Russian Germans. They have to be in their mind when they decide youth policy in their city. That's what I would say as a social worker. If they have offers, you don't need special mobile youth workers. But this is not the fact. They are not in their mind. So all these projects in Baden-Württemberg, in Germany, these 1,600 projects of mobile youth work or street work, they were established because the present, the other youth organizations, those preventive approach people, were not able to collect them, to reach them, hard to reach people, And mobile youth worker and street work are special trained to reach the hard to reach people. Yeah.
The population of Stuttgart, how many people are living in Stuttgart, and what about employment, unemployment percentage?
In Stuttgart, unemployment rate is fairly low, about 4%, not the average of Germany. Baden-Württemberg is one of the best states, but we have about 1/3 migrants from Turkey, Balkan countries, Spain, Italy, and so on, and lots of Russians, former Yugoslavian, and Albania. And this is actually the biggest problem because they have a lot of school dropouts compared with the German, and altogether about 620,000 inhabitants in Stuttgart. And 80% of the target group of the mobile youth worker in Stuttgart work with migrants. Only 20% are Germans. And after World War II in the 60s, when we started there were a lot of refugees coming from Russia, Poland, from the former German states in the east, but also from the Balkan countries, from Hungary, from Romania. There were many Germans also, and then of course from Kazakhstan, Russia, Georgia, Poland, and Ukraine. So gradually, at that time there were real refugee families which have to be integrated, and of course guest workers, as we call them, from Italy, from Spain, Yugoslavia. German government invited them, as you told me, as you invited the Pakistanis. Yeah? And some Germans say, well, we invited them, they are not going back. We thought a guest is going back, it stays only for a while, then it goes back. This does not work. They brought their family along and they are a big community. And now they really thinking about what policy did we do in the past. There was not a real sophisticated integration policy. Now we have a big problem. We have it all over Europe. Integration is the name of the game. And mobile youth work or outreach workers are very much confronted with this approach. And here they can prove whether they can make a contribution of integration. But of course, our target group is more those who misbehave, who are violent, aggressive, and are not going to school and attacking people. So, when